Okay guys, welcome back to the rigging videos. So we have all of our joints in place and we have our IK handles, we have the foot roll hierarchy set up in our outliner. So next what we have to do is we have to start making the controls. So in these, they're going to mostly be made out of curves, mostly nerve circles actually. So that's what we're going to use to build these. And they're just going to be connected to our joints and our IKs in sort of strategic places and set up so that we can actually use those to move the character. So it'll be like puppet strings, kind of. So we'll go ahead and just start making those, and then I'll show you how to get them all set up kind of as we go. So the first one that we're going to make, and I'm actually just going to pull out this NURBS primitive little box because we're going to need NURB circles a lot. First, let me just change our settings here because we don't need that many sections. I'm just going to move that down to 8 sections. So that'll have a nice circle that's around, but we don't have too many points there. So that's probably what we're going to be doing there. So I'll create a circle. And let me go ahead and hit 3 on that. Actually, I'm going to change that in our little box here. Let's make this, instead of linear, we'll make it cubic. And then make sure that it's set to 8 and create. And now, yeah, there's a nice circle. And then if you go to like your control vertices, you don't have too many points. They're enough that it will work, but it's still easy to work with. So I'll go back to object mode on here. And what I'll do here, this is going to be sort of our main control. This is going to be able to allow us to move the character wherever we want, and everything else is going to eventually be parented to this. So we're going to call this the God control because this is the control that controls everything. And then for our tag, it's going to be CTRL for controls. So that's our God control. And then I will duplicate this, sort of lift it up, and what I'll do is I'll just snap it right to that root, just like that. And then I'll sort of scale it in, and this is going to be our center of gravity control, or our cog control. And what this will let us do is when we move this around and rotate it and stuff, that will help everything sort of move from the hip. So if we need to squat, we'll sort of take this and pull it down. The knees will bend and the torso and everything above it will come down. So it changes the center of gravity. So let's go ahead and rename that COG, C-O-G, and then we'll just take that 1 off of our little tag there. And that's our center of gravity control. Then I'll take the same circle and duplicate it, and I'll just scale it in a little. And this is going to be our hip control. So I've scaled it in, and what this is going to do is this is going to control the hip rotation. We'll get that set up here in a bit, but let's go ahead right now. And I'm actually just going to take some of these points, and I'll just lift these up a little. And then these points here, just going to push those down. And we get kind of a sort of a swivelly kind of a shape here. Maybe I'll take this and sort of move it down a little. Now I'll go ahead and keep that snapped to the root. There we go. So this is going to be our hip control. So I'll go ahead and just change this to hip. Take that 1 off of our control. And that's going to be our hip control. So now we need to start building the controls for the spine. So I'll go ahead and take this one and I'll duplicate it. I'll sort of push it up, and I'm going to start, let's see, how's the best way to do this? All right, let me scale this down to maybe here, and then I will just move this. I'm going to look at it from the side view here. So we're going to try to start sort of lining it up right there. I think that's the best way. Yeah. So we'll sort of line it up like that. And then I'll come up here and take the scale and we'll sort of squish it in. And actually, that's not really, yeah, that's too far to the side. So we'll go ahead and look for the front here and sort of center that on that right there. So you kind of have this little loop sticking out the back. And you know what might help too is if we turn on our geometry layer. That way we can see, because we need to make sure that's sort of sticking far enough about the back so that we can grab a hold of it really easy. That's the reason that we're doing this, is that we need to make sure that because you never want to actually grab joints or CVs or anything like that, joints or IK handles, and set keyframes directly on those. They're too hard to get to. They're sort of buried inside the geometry of the character. So we're building all these controls so that it's going to be easier to just select things and set some keyframes on them. So right now I'm going to hit insert, and then I am going to move this pivot point right to that joint right there. And now when we move this, it'll rotate sort of around that pivot point, or when we rotate it or whatever. So, and now what we'll do is just going to duplicate this. Actually, first let's change the name. This is our back 1 control. And then I'll duplicate this and then just sort of snap that to the next one. And this is our back 2 control. And then we'll do the same thing again. Lift this up and snap it right here. Oops, I didn't duplicate it. Let me just go back really quick. There we go. Snap that up here. This is our back 3 control. One more time, duplicate that, snap that here. Make sure that we're kind of, yeah, that's back 4, so this is our back 4 control. Duplicate that, snap that up to here. This is our back 5. And then we'll duplicate that and lift it up so it snaps right there. And that's our back 6, yeah. So those are our back controls, and then we're just going to do a couple more the same way for the neck. And then we'll adjust the sizes too if we need to. So I'll just move that up to here. That's going to be neck 1 control. I'll duplicate that. Snap that one into place. That's neck 2. And then duplicate that and snap that into that big joint right there. And that's our neck 3. Right, so then what we'll do, especially on these neck ones, let's just scale those in a little bit. Just to sort of differentiate them from the back. And you can change these sizes however you want to. I probably will just leave them like they are, but that's good enough for now. So, all right, so we've got the backs and we've got the necks. Okay, so then we're going to need something for the collarbone and the shoulder. So, okay, let's make a new circle. We'll lift this up. Sort of move it over here. I'll scale it. And then we'll rotate it so it's sort of... Turn on my geometry so I can see better what I'm doing here. So let's see. Let's put that sort of around that shoulder. And then we can scale it up a little. Maybe scale it in this way. Maybe, let's see. Let's actually sort of turn it a little like that. And then we can take some of these top little points and just put a little curve in it. Just to make it look a little more interesting. There we go. All right, and so we've got that sort of snapped right in the middle there. So what we're going to need to do on this one is we're actually going to need to change where this pivot point is, because it's sort of here at the shoulder so we can recognize what's happening, and it's part of moving the shoulder. But when you actually move your shoulders, that movement happens at the collarbone. If you sort of think about that, your collarbone is really only attached right here in the middle, and then your whole shoulder and shoulder blade sort of set up, just sort of hangs off right there. That's why you can move it back and forth in all different directions and shrug your shoulders and stuff. So what we'll do is I'm going to hit insert. I'm going to take this pivot point and I'm going to move it to the collarbone. So now, when we move this and rotate it, it happens at the collarbone. That's going to be important later on. And then another thing that we can do, because we need one on the other side as well. So I'm actually going to take this and just group it to itself temporarily, because that's going to put our pivot point right in the middle. And then I'll duplicate that group. And then I'm going to go to the scale X, put in a negative. And that's going to put it over to the other side. So, and it actually keeps that pivot point sort of in the same area as well. So that makes that really easy. Now we have to do a tiny bit of cleanup here in the outliner. So let me find, because this is still called nerve circle too, so that's got to get fixed at some point. But let's take these out. And then these two empty groups can get deleted. And now, let's go ahead and rename this stuff. So this is going to be our left collar, or our left shoulder control. So left shoulder control. And this one is our right shoulder control. And I'll go ahead and put, whoops, a little space in there. That way we have some underscores. And that's going to be our shoulder controls. All right, next we're going to need some wrist and hand controls. So I'm going to take this, actually, you know what, I'll just make a new circle. I'll make a new circle. Sort of scale it up a little, not that much. And then sort of bring it over. And I'm going to just snap this to my wrist right here. This is going to be my wrist. So there, that's right in the center of that joint there. Might not need to be that big. So we'll maybe make it a little smaller. And this is going to be my left wrist control. And then we'll take this again, and duplicate it, and I'll bring it down here. And this will be our hand control. So let me get that sort of in place and at the right size and everything. Just going to scale it so it kind of surrounds this hand. Like that. And then this hand control is going to have to do everything from this joint right here. So I'll go ahead and let me move it back a little. Actually, what I'll do is just sort of elongate it a bit. And I'll hit insert. And I'll snap this pivot point to this joint right there. So that's going to be our left hand control. So let me just change the name right here. And then actually what we can do is just take these two things, group them temporarily, duplicate them and mirror them over across the scale X. So now that's exactly where it needs to be, just like on the other side. Need to do a little cleanup in the outliner. So we've got our groups here. Let's pull that out. And then this other group. So, and then we need to just do a little bit of renaming here. This is a right wrist control. So we'll take this L, change it to a capital R, and get rid of this one. And this is our right hand control. And then let me just double check. I think, yeah, I should have some capital L's on these. Just to stay consistent, you know. We're trying to stay consistent here. And then that's looking good, and that's looking good. And I think that is all the controls that we're going to need. We've got our hand and our wrist, our shoulders. That's probably good. We've got all the ones on the spine. Oh, no, wait. We've got to get the feet. So we've got to, and actually what I'll do with this is I'm just going to draw out the feet. I'm going to create a cube. And this is just a temporary cube that I'm going to use as a reference while I'm making my curve. So I'm going to scale this up a little. And I'm just going to sort of surround the foot with this cube. Let me go to the front a little here. I'll lift this up. Kind of maybe scale it down a little. Kind of like that. And then scale it sort of like this. Maybe I'll sort of take this face, scale it out a little like that. Maybe it doesn't need to be that big. Take this face maybe and scale it in a little. And then maybe take this, whoops, got off on a weird tool there. Take this edge right here and let me turn off my soft select. It looks like I've got soft select on. I'll just check that off. There we go. And just sort of push that down a little just to make kind of a foot shape. So then what I can do is I'm going to actually come up here to create. I'm going to go to curve tools and I'm going to get the EP curve tool out here. And what I'll do is I'm going to make sure this is set to linear so it makes hard corners. And then I'm just going to hold down V and I'm going to start clicking on the corners of this box and just sort of tracing around it. And you can go over this if you want. You can overlap, whatever you want to do. I'm just making a box. And then let's see, let's go this way again. Because again, it doesn't really matter how many times you overlap this. Just trying to trace this whole thing. And then it looks like on the back we have a couple things that we can, I'll just come back to here. And what I'm trying to do is just to make sure that there's sort of one of these curves on every edge of this box. And it looks like we got that. So then I can select the actual box and delete it. And that's our foot control right there. This is going to be our left foot control. And then do the same. Actually, what I'll do here is just going to take that pivot point and I'll just snap that right to the ball right there. That's good. And then just do that same mirroring trick that we did before. Group this to itself. Mirror it across the scale X. And then come up into our outliner. Do our cleanup on our outliner. Looks like we got some empty groups here that we can get rid of. Actually, just delete those. And then here is our other foot. And that's our left foot. And it's misspelled. Look at that. Probably the other one is too. That's all right. I'll just fix it. Okay. Oh, it didn't even... Weird. Okay. Okay, so let's undo because that didn't work out like I thought it would. All right, so there we go there. So we'll duplicate this group. Right, so now we got two groups. I just wasn't checking carefully and making sure things were happening. Now we've got the two mirrored over. Now then, we can come up here. It's still misspelled, look at that. That's gonna change to a T. And then this one, I'm gonna put an R in there and then fix that little error. And then I'll lift these out of our groups with my middle mouse button. Then these are our empty groups and we can get rid of those. And then the pivot points are in the right place and everything is how it should be. So these are our controls. So with our controls made, we have them all built, we have them all in place. We have a few things that we have to do to set them up in the channel box. And the first thing is we have to make sure that all of these are set to 0. See how you've got some scale numbers in here. We select this foot, we've got some numbers that aren't 0 or aren't at the defaults. This one actually is looking pretty good. But we need to freeze the transformations on all of our controls so that they will work how they need to later on. So let me go up here and I'll just open up the modify menu and I'll just go along, whoops, and just start freezing everything. This probably is fine, so I won't do anything here. This needs to be frozen, so we'll do that. This other foot has got a 180 and a -1, so that needs to be frozen. And then you can just go along and just freeze everything. Because you want all of these to have defaults set to 0. Because one, you'll have all kinds of trouble if you try to rig it when they're not that way, because some of the other things that you have to do later won't work. And you just want to remember, make it easy to remember how to get this back into the default position. And the way that you can do that is just to make sure that it's set to 0. So if you set this back to 0, you know it's going to go back to the default position. But if you left it like this, then default position is all this craziness, and we don't need that. So we'll just freeze all the transformations. And we'll do the same thing on all of our arm parts. Oops. All right, right, so let's just go ahead and flick through that again and just make sure. Zeros, zeros, zeros. Oh, we missed that one. So freeze that one. Zeros, zeros, and zeros. And then, oh, so we missed that one too. Look at that. This is why you go back and you check, because you never know when you could have just got off one or you didn't quite click it. Looks like those all are set to 0. Double check one more time. Looks like we're all good here. And then this one, and this one, and we've already checked the ones at the bottom. So now you've got your controls made and you've got all the transformations frozen. And now it's time to start connecting these to your skeleton. And this can get a little tricky because you have to use parenting in some instances, and then you have to use the parent constraint in other instances. So, and that can get confusing. But here is the rule of thumb about that. If you are connecting your controls to each other in a chain or something like that, if you're connecting them together to each other, you're going to use parenting. If you are connecting your controls to joints or IK handles or anything on your skeleton, you're going to use the parent constraint. So let's do the constraining part first. We'll go ahead and start down here with the feet. I'm going to open up my outliner because we're going to have to get at our foot groups here. So this left foot control, I'm going to get that selected, and then I'm going to control shift the left foot group. And this is going to be an instance where we constrain because we're connecting the control to the IK handles. I mean, we're connecting it to the foot group, but that's where the IK handles are. So we're going to use a parent constraint right there. And now if you open this, you can see that you've got all of your foot group stuff, and then you've also got this parent constraint right here. And that can just be there just like that. That's fine. So that's your parent constraint for your foot. And then we're going to do the other side. And just do, I'm going to pull this out so we don't have to keep opening it. Parent constraint on that too. And then if we select this now, you can see that all you have to do is just select your controller and it selects your foot group. And then you can move it however you want. And that works. Okay, so those are done. So let's come up here to the hip area. This center of gravity, we are going to connect that to our root. So we'll control select the root, and we're going to use a parent constraint for that. I'm going to constrain that. So now, if I move this, you can see that it moves your center of gravity. It helps you squat or whatever it is that you need to do to change your center of gravity. And you can see how our feet will they're kind of already set up to sort of do what they need to do because we did that foot group thing earlier, setting it up that way. So next we will connect our hip to our little pelvis joints. This is going to be our hip swivel. So we're going to select the parent first. That's the other thing that's tricky about this, is that when you're doing regular parenting, you select the child first. When you're using the parent constraint, you select the parent first. So I'm going to come in here and just shift select this joint right here, if I can get a hold of it. It's a little hard. Might have to open up my root a little. There we go. And then parent constrain that. Select this again. And select the right pelvis and parent constrain that. So now, you can see when I select this, now both of them turn pink. That's how you can tell things are constrained to your joints, because you select it and then whatever it's constrained to will turn into this pink color. Then I can get my rotation. And you can see now I have a nice little hip wobble. You can do the twist if you want. So that's going to work now. So then the next thing we have to do is all of our back joints, and we're just going to constrain them right to the joints that they're sitting right next to. And just we're going to use the same parent constraint all the way up. And then I'm going to come back and double check this, but I'm just trying to be a little bit fast here. Alright, so we've got those all constrained, and you can tell as I'm clicking down that things are turning pink. And that is exactly what is supposed to happen. And you can see that that's going to rotate those a little bit. So, it's actually easiest to tell up here. You can see that rotating. So now we've got those all constrained to where they need to go. So our big sort of shoulder controls, we're going to constrain those to the collarbone with the parent constraint. Now with our wrist, we're actually going to constrain that to the arm IK. So this is our left wrist. Going to constrain that to the arm IK, the left arm IK. And again, I'm just selecting the thing here, control selecting my IK and the outliner and parent constraint. And now you can see that's going to bend the arm. So that's all the I'm going to need to do with the parent constraint. I can close that now. There's a few things that need to be done as far as parenting. And then there's another constraint that we have to set up later too. So with the hand here, I'm going to select the hand and I'll shift select this wrist control, and then I'm just going to do regular parenting. I'm just going to hit P. So now when I select this, that gets selected too. When we move it, it moves with the hand. That's what we're looking for there. Same thing here on the other side. Select the hand, shift select the wrist control, and then parent it. Now with the spine, we're going to do a whole parenting chain just like we have on the joints. So we're going to start at the top. This is going to get parented to this. And then this is going to get parented to the one below it. So you see what I'm doing here? So now when we select this and I rotate it, it rotates the whole thing because everything is rotating. So that's the child. We'll shift select the parent and hit P. That's the new child. We'll shift select the new parent and hit P. And we're just going to do this all the way down the spine. Alright, so now we can rotate the spine at any point, just like this. And I think what we can do is if we select all of them, then we can sort of arch our back a little bit in different ways. So there's a few different ways that you can use this back setup. If you want to arch it or if you just want to bend it, sort of maybe at the shoulder, you can do that too. So that's the back setup. So now we need to parent this to our center of gravity, parent our hips to our center of gravity. We need to parent our center of gravity to our God control. I think that we need to, let's see, yeah, we need to parent these to the God control as well. our shoulder controls. And our wrist controls as well. Because remember, this controls everything, so everything's got to eventually get parented to it. And then we select this, we've got everything. So now there are a couple more controls that we need to set up, and this is going to be for our wrists and our elbows. And this is going to be pull vectors. So let me go ahead and I will just talk to you about how to make that. So what I'll use is I'm just going to use a locator for this. I'm going to look at this from the front view. I'm going to come up here to create locator. And this is just like a null point in Maya. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to snap this to my knee joint here. And then sort of just take it and pull it forward, kind of like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Those are our pull vectors there. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger so they're easier to see. So this is going to be called left knee pull vector. That's probably good enough. Yeah, you know what? Let's change this to just PV, and we'll remember what PV means. That's the pull vector. And then this is the right knee pull vector. And we're trying to maintain our sort of continuity with our naming. So that's going to be what's happening there. And then we're going to need some for the elbows too. So I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to put it up here. Whoops. Near the elbow. Sort of snap that into the elbow a little. Actually, I might need to do that a little better. I'll just snap those right in to the joints, because I think they were snapping to the actual geometry earlier. It wasn't really how I wanted, so I'll just move those back out there. And then this one is going to be a left elbow pull vector. And then I'm going to duplicate it and put it into this other elbow over here. Just holding down B and snapping it. And then I'll rename it right elbow pull vector. And then I'll select both of these, push them back just a little. And now we're going to go ahead and set up the pull vector constraints for our arms and our legs. That way we can rotate our knees and elbows. So, and let's see. And I do always get the order mixed up on this, but I think you select the pull vector first, and then you shift select the IK handle, and it's under Constrain. You're just going to find where it says pull vector. And I don't think that is right. Let me try it the other way. Let me select this one, and then I'll shift select the locator, click pull vector. Okay, so I think I had it right the other way. Again, this is the stuff that happens when you're trying to rig. So yeah, there we go. See how we've got this sort of going back here. Now if I hold this, if I move this up and down, you can see that elbow rotates. If I bend my arm a little more, you can see that it rotates quite a lot. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Select the locator, shift select the IK handle, do a pull vector constraint. And then I'll do the same thing here. I'll shift select the locator. Got to find my ankle IK. Constrain that. And then the same thing over here. And now, if I lift this up a little, and I move this, oops, you can see I have movement in my leg, in my knee. Okay, so I've been looking at this rig, and it's mostly how we want it, but there are a couple things that we need to fix. There's a couple mistakes I actually made that we need to correct, and then just some better ways to do things. I'm looking really mostly at my pole vectors and the way that my arms are parented. So let's just do the arms first. So right now, if I were to select one of these back controllers and then try to bend my character over, you see that my shoulders actually don't follow, and I'm sort of like breaking my shoulders right there. So that's not what we want, obviously. And the reason why it's like that is because I have just parented some stuff in the wrong place. So all I'll have to do is just really quickly fix that. So what we want to do is, instead of parenting these shoulder controls to the God control, because that's where they're parented right now, we want to parent them to this back controller right here, the one that is associated with this joint where the arms branch off. So I'm just going to select that. We're going to shift select that back controller and hit P. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Hit P there. And now if we were to take one of these back controllers and bend over again, you can see that works a lot better. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can actually make the whole arms work a lot better too. So I will go ahead and just take the wrist, parent that to the shoulder, and then do the same thing on the other side. And now that's going to work even better. See, the whole thing is just bending just like it should. All right, so that fixes that. So that was just a really quick little thing. And this is the sort of thing that's going to happen when you rig. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to forget to do things and have to go back and redo them. Or you'll just figure out better ways to do stuff as you're going along. And that's sort of what's going on with my pole vectors. So the first thing is, I'll just select this one. And so you can see how over in the channel box, I forgot to freeze my transforms. So that's a mistake that I made that we can correct. However, I think that what I'm going to do is maybe not use a locator for this, because what happens is I come up here to modify freeze transformations, and my locator gets really, really tiny and almost disappears. And that sort of defeats the point of freezing the transformations, because what we want is for this to stay the same and reset all of this to 0, and that's not what's happening with my locators. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing is, I think I will just get rid of those pole vector constraints, because we're going to have to redo those anyway. So I'll just go under my arm IKs, because the same thing is going to happen up here on these locators with my pole vector constraints up there. So I'm just going to get the one that says pole vector from each of these and just delete them. And then I'll need to find the same thing under, there it is. That's the parent constraint. Looking for my pole vector constraints for this. Here we are. There's our knee pole vector constraints. That's actually our locators. So let's see if we can get a hold of that IK handle in there. There we go. It's probably going to be in my foot group Yeah, there it is. Nope, that's the parent constraint. It just takes picking through and finding things, and that's just the nature of this process. There it is, pull vectors. So they're going to be in my foot groups. And the reason that you have to just sort of pick through things is because it's hard to sometimes predict sort of where things are supposed to be. But there's my pull vector constraints. Like, what group is this going to be in? Because it's connected to sort of this locator, but then also the IK handles, which are inside of foot groups. So you just have to search for things sometimes. But we found them, and they're in our foot groups. The leg IK pull vector constraint for the left and the right side. I'll get rid of those. Now I'm going to leave these here just for a second, just as a guide. And I think that what I will do is I'm just going to use a circle for my pull vectors. You can actually go in and draw a little star shape that looks like this with the curve tool, just like we did the feet. You can do that if you want, or you can use really any shape that you want. I'm just going to use a circle. So I'm just going to make a little NURBS circle. Make it probably a little bit bigger than that, maybe something like that big. Now hold down V with my move tool and just snap this. Oops. Well, something weird's going on. There we go. Just snap this right to that locator right there. Weird. I'll look at it from a couple different angles. That'll probably make it easier. Looks like we're a little high. There we go. Now I'll just snap it right to that locator there. And now this I'm going to get rid of. And then I'm going to call this one left knee pull vector. Going to rotate it up just like that, so that's sort of up and down. I'll just put a 90 in here, just like that. And now I'll freeze my transforms on that. And then I can take this, and let's see if I can get in here and see. Yeah, I will shift select my ankle IK just like I did before. And go ahead and come up here to constrain pull vector. And now if I move this, now you can see that rotation is happening. So I'm just going to redo the rest of them. I'm going to take this and duplicate it and sort of just snap it in right here. Change the name, obviously, because that's the right knee. And then I'll get rid of this old one here. Go ahead and see if I can grab that IK handle. Do another pull vector constraint. And now that one's rotating just like we want. I'll duplicate this. And then this is going to be one of the ones that I sort of move up here to my elbows. All right, let's snap it right to that locator. Whoops. Well, what I might be able to do is snap it to this joint right here. That's so weird. I wonder why it keeps trying to go to the head. Anyway, what I can do is if it's the snapping isn't going to work, then I can just line it up as close as I can in both directions. That looks like that's going to be just fine. And then that's going to be my right elbow pole vector. I can get rid of this locator. And then do another pole vector constraint to my elbow. That's moving like we want. And then I can duplicate that, move this over here. Make sure it's lined up real good with that locator. That's that green line. That's going to be my left elbow. Get rid of this locator. And then reconnect this pole vector constraint right here. That's working. All right, now everything's fixed. We have the back moving how we want. We have pole vector constraints that are going to work. And you can, again, you can make these any shape that you want. What I will go ahead and still do, though, is I'm going to parent these to the God control so they will move when we move the character, because that's really important. So I'm just going to parent those right here to the God control. And now they'll move with the character. So that is how we want our controls to be set up. And then again, be patient with yourself. You're going to find that you have forgotten to do things and you have to go back and fix them. And that's just what we've done here. I was showing you how to fix something that I forgot to do or did in a way that could have been done better. And so then I just showed it to you. So next we are going to get into talking about setting up your controls and your custom attributes. So you can use like the foot roll and the finger rolls and things like that. So thanks. Bye.